everybody for taking your Wednesday and hopping on and, being driven to learn and take advantage of this time. I think that's such a big deal, especially now. So I am going to put in the chat here links to the slide if you want to follow along with me. And also, just so you know, if you want to connect off of this presentation, you can always find me on Twitter. You can Google my name. It is Lerch, not Lurch, unlike the Addams family. So if you look me up and you're like, David Lerch is not showing up, look for that and you will find me. And I apologize, like off to my right, I'm in my office right now, and what you can't see, my lightsaber is next to me, and my daughter came down and put this like right next to me, like as I was starting this, and she turned it on and she gave me the thumbs up to let me know that it worked. So I was like, great, thank you. We could have done this an hour later, but thank you. I mean, it's important stuff, right? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll go ahead and get started. And I do a bunch of PD, right? Do this stuff all the time as part of my job at school, and I do this in my free time as well. I'm very lucky that I get the opportunity to work with teachers and organizations to talk about a whole bunch of different things. And I know that a lot of times that you attend professional development, and during those professional development sessions, one of the things that you'll do is you will see something you like, you'll be super into it. You're like, oh, I love this. This is something that I'm going to use. And then if you don't write it down or you don't do something active with it, you're going to forget about it, right? So as we go through today, there are going to be times where I'm going to ask you to stop and think. Now, I can't make you do it. Obviously, I can't, force you to stop and think. I can't make you be an active participant. However, I do find that if I take time to stop and think and reflect on these things that we're talking about, then typically I'm able to save those things and use them at a later date. And as we know, as teachers and educators ourselves, those are best practices anyway. So periodically throughout today, I'm going to ask you to stop, reflect, share something out in the chat, and we'll get to all that here in a moment. But today's session is all about gamification. As I said, my name is David Lerch. So as I said, what you need for today, really simple. If you have something in front of you, notebook, sticky note, note cards, something like that you can write on, that works really well. I'm a big fan of Google Keep. Getting to Google Keep in my email or in my my Google Apps menu, I really like that so that I can jot down things. I actually just attended a session yesterday by one of the LTC members on drones in the classroom. And during that session, as he was presenting, I was like copying and pasting a million things into a Google Keep note so that I knew I could reflect back on it later and use it. So my only request for today is that you use this tactic. Write down things as we go, right? I'm going to ask you to reflect, as I said. When I do that, just think about what we talked about. Could you use it? Do you use it? And go from there, right? Because I want us to take something from this. So a little about me. As Matt said, my name is David Lerch. I've been an educator for 16 years. In that time, I have worked in 5th grade. I've worked in 6th grade. I've worked in 7th grade. I worked in 8th grade. About 3 years ago, during the pandemic, I was moved out of the classroom in 6th grade into an instructional coaching position in my district. So it was the first of its kind in my district, and one of the first ones in our little area in Southern Illinois. And I was put into that position in a triage role as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So when the pandemic hit, my superintendent approached me and said, hey, we're going to need some help getting up and running with computers and technology. I said I'd be happy to help. And what that entailed was us going one-to-one about 5 days before the school year started, and then just working in triage for a year, as I like to say, to get everybody up and squared away. And I've kind of stayed in that position since that time. I do host a podcast with my good friend Adam Geisen called EdTech Distilled. If you're interested, you can check it out. We're on a little bit of a hiatus right now, but season 3 is coming soon. I'm all the Google certifications you can get. And when it comes to engagement and gamification, this is something that I'm very, very passionate about, and I believe very strongly in. And it's something I've spent a lot of my 16 years as an educator learning about and implementing. So why should you listen to me? Now, One, I wanted to pick these two pictures because that guy's got a pretty sweet beard, and I really would like to grow like something real gnarly like that. I don't think my wife would be into it though. She prefers it a little shorter, so I can dream, and that was kind of like my projection on this guy. But so why should you listen to me? What is the value in me outside of just listing stuff, right? Because I can sit here and I can say a million different certifications and a million different reasons why I think I might be qualified to do this. Well, I want to tell you a story. So I started in education, like I said, 16 years ago, and I've been very lucky in my career. I've had a lot of opportunities come my way, and I've had the chance to kind of explore those opportunities and make some really amazing connections with some awesome educational people. Excuse me. However, it was not always like that. My very first year, I was teaching fifth grade at the time. I was working in a small school district, and my experience left a lot to be desired. I can remember the day that my principal decided to come in and do an informal walkthrough and see how things were going in my class was the day that I had a fifth grader who decided that it would be hilarious when we took our bathroom break to come back into the classroom, but hide inside of my trash can and pull all the garbage on top of his head. So my principal comes in. How's it going, Mr. Lerch? Oh, fantastic. Everything is great. Where is Scott? Oh, he's somewhere. So he's in the trash can. This is the point in which he stands up, bursts out, and goes, surprise. It did not go well. Excuse me, I apologize. Getting over a little bit of a head cold here. So my first year was an absolute nightmare. And I walked out of that first year and decided, you know what? I was 100% convinced that I would not be in education after that first year. I knew I was going to bomb. It wasn't for me. I couldn't figure out what to do. And then I read this book called Tools for Teaching by Fred Jones. And we're going to link to some Fred Jones stuff a little bit later in this session. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Scott's giving me flashbacks here. Okay. But I read this book by Fred Jones called Tools for Teaching. And in Tools for Teaching, it detailed for me how you can engage your class in a calm, positive way, and you can do it in a game style. Now, Fred Jones has sadly passed, and I think when that book was published, it was like 16 years ago. He was probably in his 70s or his 80s. And the book is published now, but it's not really something that is circulated widely. And it's not something that I think people even refer to much. But I would highly suggest the book Tools for Teaching by Fred Jones. And you can't forget the name. He literally has the two most common names ever, Fred and Jones. But in it, he outlined a way in which you could encourage kids in a game manner to get good behavior from them. So I read that the summer after my first year, after my boy Scott decided to jump out of the trash can. And it changed my life. Because now, rather than me dreading my lessons and dreading how am I going to get the kids on task, how am I going to do this, I actually had a plan of attack, and it wasn't hard. That's what floored me. I had always thought that engaging kids and working with students was really difficult, and it wasn't. And I started that process with my students, and it took off. And then all of a sudden, I'm at the end of the first quarter, and I am not as stressed as I was the year before. And I wasn't drinking either. That came later. That was COVID. But I wasn't feeling this overwhelming feeling of like, oh, I don't think education's for me. Like I felt like, okay, maybe I could do this. Fast forward 16 years, and the joke prior to me taking a coaching position was, oh, it was Mr. Lerch's class, because a Mr. Lerch class is where you always put all of those challenging kids in sixth grade. If you had a group of third graders, 10 of them were really tough, you got to divvy them up. But when they get to Mr. Lerch, they're all going to go in there. And it was something I really prided myself on. And a large part of the way that I was able to engage challenging students was gamification. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about gamification and how easy it really is. It's not hard. And I shouldn't say that, because if I'm like going to write a book about this, then it should sound really hard, but it's not. It's super easy to do. And we're going to go through all the different ways you can do it today. And we're going to break it down into levels because it's game style, right? But before we do, here's what I want you to do. Take 60 seconds. And I want you to think about the term gamification, because in order for us to know how to do it, we need to know what it is. But I want you to think about what it means to you, gamification. And you don't have to Google it. You don't have to like, pull the Webster's dictionary definition. Just take a minute. Excuse me. Take a minute and write in the chat, what does that mean to you? I'm going to put a timer up here so you'll see that countdown. And if you're willing to put it in the chat, please do so. And then I'll pull a couple and we'll kind of talk about that. Ooh, I really like these answers. So Leslie says making or using games to help teach something. Jeanette says making learning fun, which is a great way to put it. And Kathy, I like this. It says in your room, it looks like teams that compete with one another on different tasks to earn points for their teams, as well as earning prizes for their individual prowess. Kathy, that's a pretty good definition there. And Leslie says gamification, taking an activity or skill, turning it into a game to create engagement. Heather says playing games, keeping score, drawing kids in to make learning I'm just kidding, learning fun. Perfect. 100%. Yeah. And ultimately that's the thing, right, guys? Because what engagement actually is, it's the official definition of what it is and how we're going to define it is this. Now, this is the only time I'm going to use this big fat term. But gamification is adding in game mechanics into non-game environments, right? Traditionally, it's adding in things like into a website or online community, learning management system, intranet, something like that to increase participation. And the goal of gamification is to engage with consumers, employees, and partners to inspire collaboration, share, and interact. And it's actually funny this definition comes up. I get the opportunity sometimes to check out like some things Google is doing. So if they're trying to do something a little bit different in their their EDU space. And recently I had a chance to check out this very unique thing that they're going to be trying to do, where they're trying to gamify some more of their platforms, particularly like with regards to their help platform. It was very interesting. Like, you really don't realize the strength of things like badges or, just little achievements, how far those go. So, and ultimately, like you guys said, gamification is engagement. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. So let's get started with our first level, level 1, right? We're talking about games. Games are leveled. I'm an OG when it comes to video games, right? Like I'm an 80s kid. So Mario Brothers was my jam. And still is today. My daughter and I play it all the time on the Switch. Switch is the greatest thing ever. We've burned so many hours on that bad boy. And so when I thought about what would be an easy way to break a presentation like this down, it naturally fits into the concept of gaming levels. So this is going to be level 1. And this is that idea that I think most people do in their classroom, and they classify it maybe as classroom management, but they don't necessarily think that it's gamified. And I'm going to show you some ways you can gamify this with your kids. So in level 1, our goal is to reward good behavior so it's repeated, right? Like Pavlov's dog. We want to reward a kid, so they're going to keep doing that thing to get that reward. And that's kind of the basis of what this first level of gamification is. Now, some ways that you probably gamify your class without even realizing it is, number 1, a classroom currency. If we look back at our chat, I know that Kathy had that reference where her kids are earning points to get different things in her class. And that's a form of gamification. And a really simple thing to do in your class is, if you're thinking, okay, I want to gamify, I want to get this out of my kids, one of the easiest ways to do it is to start giving them points when they do things well. I sat down with a 5th grade teacher this year, and she was looking at a way to help improve the behavior when students were walking in the hallway from her classroom to her partner teacher's classroom. And this is literally what we did. She put a T-chart in her room. Every time the kids did it, she modeled it first, right? Because you have to model what you want the kids to do. And most kids are visual learners. About 85% of them are. And those kids saw it. They did it. They got a point. If they didn't do it, She got a point at the end of the week. They tallied it, and however many points she had went towards a few minutes of free time. Really simple to do. And if you're not doing something like that, it's such an easy way to introduce gamification and to work on behavioral activities. And you don't have to be complex with it either. Another teacher I work with, since we're looking at, this behavior-based concept for level 1, another teacher I work with was really overcomplicating it. She was looking at it in terms of, okay, well, I want to do classroom currency so that kids can earn money for good behavior. Love it. Great idea. A little bit more work than I think I'd be willing to put in. But again, if hey, if it works for you, it works for you. So when she was figuring out what this looked like, she sat down and she said, okay, well, in my class, I want the kids to be able to earn $5 a week. And then she was throwing out all these ideas for ways that you can earn other money. So like $2 could go here. And she started to throw out different amounts of currency for different things in her class. And so I told her that's a little bit too advanced. Maybe just stick with one number. So $1 a day or $5 a week or something like that. So again, easy way to do it. Probably my most effective. T-chart. It takes 2 seconds to write it up there. If you're going to put something like that in your class, so simple. Put a little note. Tell the janitor, don't erase. Easy. Classroom currency is a great way to gamify your class and to do positive reinforcements. Certainly, there's a place for punitive punishment with students. There needs to be. There's consequences in life. But this is a way to make some more positive things. Now, again, you want to take it tech-based. You want to make it a little bit easier on yourself so you don't have to do a lot of writing. Or if you're like me and you have the world's worst handwriting and zero artistic ability, Class Dojo is a great tool to do that. Without going too far into what Class Dojo is, just to kind of give you a view, and you may have seen or you may use this already yourself. Class Dojo functions as a tool where you set it up, you add your students. When a kid or a class does something well, you can put a positive point. When a kid or a class doesn't do something well, you can put a negative point. Parents can link to it and they can track their students' behavior. Again, super easy way that you can introduce this into your class. And it's a techie tool that you can use, and it's not hard to integrate. And again, it's another way that we can reinforce that behavior that we want with our students. And like I said, when it comes to this behavior part and this level 1 gamification, be specific and deliberate. Don't overwhelm. You don't need to have a million different things. Earn $1 for good behavior, a point for good behavior, something like that. Now, why does something like this work? As I said, it's positive reinforcement, and positive reinforcement is the key. I'm going to guess you teach kids a lot like I do. Our kids come from a variety of backgrounds, and they may not get a lot of positive influence or positive reinforcement in their own life. And I could talk for an hour on a topic like this. Right now, my recent deep dive is in SEL and SEL curriculum. So if you really want to rap about that, let me know, because I'm like in the weeds up to my elbows in that right now. And best practices. So, but again, so many of our kids don't come from a place where they get that positive reinforcement, and kind of flipping that and instituting it, you'd be surprised what you'll get. Of course, don't give up immediately. If you decide to use points and put a T-chart up and you want your kids to come into the classroom the right way, and you tell them when they do that, they get a positive point, but if they don't, they get a negative point, and you try this tomorrow and it's still not fixed by Monday, you don't want to be like blowing up my email here saying, Dave, this didn't work, because it does take time, right? A behavior, it takes about 28 days for that to become a habit. And so you got to commit a little bit to this and stick with it. But again, super easy way to gamify. Another really simple way to gamify is through classroom competition. The competition, I think, is incredibly important. As somebody who was a football player, basketball player, baseball player, coached football, coached basketball for over 10 years, and that now I have a daughter who literally hates sports. So it's pretty amazing to see. Like, I came from like the pit of like high school football coach, like, Friday night and the whole thing, and studying game film. And my daughter was born and she would sit on the bench with me at basketball games, and it was the whole thing. And She hates sports. She loves music and theater and dancing. And so I'd like to say I'm now a choir, theater, and dance dad. And that's okay. It's what she likes, but kind of funny. But competition, I'm a big fan of, and it's something that I fully support and endorse in the classroom, with a caveat. And I'll talk about what that caveat is here in a moment. So, how can you make competition in class? Some easy ways. Again, you can do this tomorrow and it requires zero effort. Number one, set your room into teams. So if you see multiple classes, each one of the classes you see is a team. Or if you want to actually take the kids that are physically in your class, maybe you have 20 kids in a class, break them into teams of 5 or teams of 4. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. Let them make their own team name and track their team points. So if you do something like you want everybody to fill out their planner, when you go around and check, team 1 got their planner out, that's a point. It's good. Team 2, up, you do what you're supposed to, that's a point. Team 3, you didn't, I'm sorry, you're not going to get a point, right? Got to stick to it, but it really does work. You can also do things like setting goals between classes. When I was teaching 6th grade, I saw 3 sections of 6th grade. And so that meant that I could break them up into 3 groups and we could do all sorts of things. Like, for example, if we had a big math test coming up, we would make a competition to see which class had the highest percentage when you averaged it out. Now, a little warning with that, depending on your class makeup, you might want to, you may want to wait on something like that, to make sure that your students are, you know, it's okay. For example, one year I know I had a class that was made up of pretty evenly broken up in terms of ability. However, my one class had 2 IEP students who were pushing into regular ed because we were trying to drop their IEP because they were really capable and they were doing well. So I was a little bit gentler with that. Maybe I would, remove certain scores or, kind of fudge the numbers and make them more competitive. Another thing you can do if you do accelerated reader or reading counts, super easy. Just make a competition. Which class gets the most points? I would say don't do most points for the year, or you can do the most points for the year, but break them into mini goals, mini targets, meaning like maybe, every month who's got the most points and then work towards the goal at the end of the year. Because what I found is if you set a goal that's 180 days out, it's way too far out for the kids to track and they'll only care about it the last month. So kind of break those little goals up and set them throughout the year. Do you have a big test coming up? Play a review game and see which class did the best on the review test or the review game you play. One of the tools we're going to look at a little later is called Kahoot. And I used to do Kahoot with my 6th graders, and I would post which class answered the most questions correct, what percentage was answered, and they would be just like vicious to know like who did what. But my one caveat about competition, and this is from somebody who is competitive, played sports, you do have to think, is my class too competitive, right? We've all had the class with like 12 athletes, they all play sports, and they just steamroll everybody else in class, right? Think about those things. It requires a little nuance, and sadly there's not a good answer as to what you need to do versus what you should do every time. But your classes, and think about that. Is it too competitive? Will feelings get too hurt? Is my class too immature? Sometimes those things come up and you can't play games with groups, and that's okay. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It just means that they are lacking in a skill that they still need to develop. When it comes to students and competition, I would also encourage stay away from like negative or losing of points. So if you split your kids into teams, don't take points away that they've already earned. That was always a big thing that I would explain to my kids, is that once you've earned that, I'm not going to take it away because you put that time in. So if you earned points on a Monday and a Tuesday, but your Wednesday was really, really bad, you just didn't earn anything on Wednesday. Your Monday and your Tuesday still count. Keep things positive and ultimately model what you want to see. As a coach and a teacher, that was something I constantly believed in and preached and kept as part of my philosophy. If I didn't want my basketball players to yell at the ref, I'm not yelling at the ref. If I don't want my students in class to be obnoxious when they win or poor losers when they lose, then I need to model those behaviors for them to show them what that looks like. And ultimately that's one of the most important things that you can do. So in terms of keeping track of points, one of my absolute favorite ways to do it is a website called Classroom Screen. Now, again, I work in Marissa. Marissa is a low-income rural Title I school district. And sometimes new tech comes in bunches, especially when ESSER funds are being spent. But sometimes tech doesn't come very quickly. And so we have to be adaptive and creative. And so for a long time, we had new smart boards, but our smart boards were starting to fail on us a little bit. And so we decided that it was more important to spend money on our Chromebooks versus buying new smart boards, which I fully agree. But we needed a way to project and do things on the board and track things and points and stuff like that. And that's where Classroom Screen came in. So the website's classroomscreen.com, and you have to launch a page. And when you do, here's what you'll see. That looks a little like Middle Earth. I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, so I apologize there. I know lightsaber, Lord of the Rings, it's a lot. I apologize. Think about my wife. We've been together for 20 years. So Classroom Screen, what it is it's literally a screen that would be effectively used in a classroom. So you'll notice at the bottom here, I've got a whole bunch of buttons, and I'm not going to go through all this, because I don't want to use up all our time doing something like this. But essentially what it is it's a screen that you can put up on any, projection board. And if you want to put a timer up there, you can put one up there. If you want to put some text, you can as well. I mean, it's pretty easy to use. And I really like to use this as a way to gamify my class because, if it's transition period and I need the kids to go to their locker, get these materials and be back in their seat, then I might put something like this up. I might say, get your math book, notebook, and workbook. And I'll post this 5 minutes and they go. And I have a running timer that the kids can see that's big in my room. I've got the directions up on the board that they can read, and then they can earn those points. You can sign in to Classroom Screen and it will save your screens. But usually I end up floating a lot in classrooms. And so, and helping out all over the place. So I usually don't have that opportunity like I might in another class. So just another really easy way for you to get to use your tools here. So let me close out of this really quick. Okay. And we'll hop back in here. And last but certainly not least, another easy way to gamify your class, and it's even built in for you, is Go Noodle. Again, these are easy level 1 behavior management. Your kids earn points, like we've talked about. Good behavior, you've earned a point. So for each point, or for every 2 points, you get to do a Go Noodle with your class. I will say, I love Go Noodle. If you don't use Go Noodle, it's a great tool that will cover a lot with you and your students. However, it does have a point of diminishing returns. So if you let the kids do as many Go Noodles as points they earn, so let's say we're, got our T-chart set up, positive points on the left side, negative points on the right side, and for every positive point the kids have, they get to do a Go Noodle, which is a great thing to do with your kids. I will say, if you do it every day, it can take a lot of time because some of the Go Noodles are 5 minutes or so. And also, if you do it every day, you can only do as many new things as the content they push out. And they push out a lot of content, but at some point, there's kind of a diminishing return here with this. So if you decide to use points and use this as a positive reward for your class, my suggestion with this, really simple, would just be, if they have more points than you, they get to do 1 or 2 Go Noodles, at the end of the day. Really simple, easy to do. And this kind of naturally gamifies what you're going to do. So you get to pick an avatar, and the more things you do, you level up your avatar. Super fun, easy, free, highly suggested. Also, if you're working with kids who are too old for this, you don't think they'll be into it, I would majorly suggest looking at some of their categories and looking at the SEL and mindfulness stuff. again, I'm all about SEL right now. I work with our credit recovery teacher. So credit recovery teacher is the teacher who his job is to help our students whose option was either to do the credit recovery program or go to safe school. So these are high school juniors and seniors who have to graduate and get these credits. And I go in there every Friday and we usually pull one of these things directly from Go Noodle and do it with them. So the SEL and mindfulness stuff is really great. Seriously, highly recommend. And last but certainly not least, just a couple of more games. If you check it out on the slide that I shared in the chat, you can get all of these. Trashketball is my number one all-time favorite game to play. It's basketball with a trash can, right? Answer a question right. You get to shoot for extra bonus points. The way we played it is if you answer a question right, you get a point. And if you get it right, you can come up and try to double your points by making a basket from somewhere. We've had epic games, last second game winners, all sorts of stuff. Trashketball is one of my favorites. Again, Fred Jones, Tools for Teaching. He has a website full of easy games that you can do. They're not, a lot of them are non-tech based, and we'll hit upon EMC2 learning a little bit later. However, just so you can see it now, EMC2 Learning is Michael Matera and John Meehan's website that's all about gamification. And we're going to talk a little bit more at length about their style of gamification because it goes deep. It's a little bit less surface level than what we're talking about here. So, but level 1, simple behavior-based stuff, easy. Here's what I want you to reflect on. Do you do something similar in your classroom? And if so, what do you do? Some of you have already been sharing this anyway, but go ahead and take a minute, reflect on it and think, what do you do? And share in the chat. Chris and Heather both said they use Kahoots. That's awesome. That's actually what we're going to talk about next. Now I am going to make the case for why I love Kahoot, but also why yes, Kathy Blickett, I'm going to talk about that. Leslie, Class Dojo. Ooh, I've done class points and class dollars and been happy with them. Nice. Yeah, Leslie, I'm very curious about that because I know that I've had people. I have a teacher right now who was making physical currency in her class, and she's now at the point where she's like, like I can't make these anymore. And actually, this is like totally off topic, but a kid like tried to forge them at home using their printer, and I mean he got in big trouble, but it was just, it's kind of funny that like we've transitioned her to Class Dojo instead of physical currency, and it's worked really well. So let's see. We've got Laura, the spinning the wheel. Yes, that's a great idea. Leslie's tried a few things from time to time. Yeah, and sometimes I think, Leslie, it can be trying long enough. And sometimes it's just knowing your class. Like if they're not into this, you gotta choose something else. I love that. Dividing into teams, teaching students to make good choices because they're in their team. Love it. Oh yeah, review football's the best. Draw 10 vertical. Matt, you're speaking my language, buddy. That's what I used to do too. Awesome. Yeah. And what I like to see is that everybody's sharing their different ideas, and absolutely old school is the best. And what I'm seeing is everybody's kind of sharing something that's similarly minded. And the idea there is that it's nuance, right? We're sharing ideas, but you got to have some nuance to apply it in your classroom. I've been very lucky. I've had the chance to speak with some students at my alma mater that are going into education. I have my undergrad from Illinois College, and then I have my master's degree from SIUE. And then for some reason, I'm doing my administrative degree right now from SIUE. I'm thinking about going into that, which what am I thinking? But I've had the chance to speak to Edwardsville and IC students, and there are some, and I always bring that up. I always say like textbooks and books and things like that. There's so many good resources, but the biggest takeaway is going to be what you choose and the way you tweak it to fit your class, because ultimately that's the most important thing, because that is like the best possible thing you can do is tweak it, make it nuanced for your students specifically. So let's talk next steps, right? So up to this point, we've said level 1, behavior-based. Let's go to that next step. This is probably your more non-traditional, like gamification stuff that you can do in your class. Now, the third level we're going to talk about at the end is like deep stuff. This is something that my buddy Adam and I have talked about ad nauseum. just like how to create a good platform that would work in this way. But before that, it's kind of testing the waters, some ways that you can continue to gamify your class and I think really engage your students. So this is tweaking traditional styles and kind of bringing them into the 21st century. And it's adding technology. So a lot of these are going to be tech based and they're going to build on that. And again, at my heart and my core, I am a technology coach. And so, I kind of always go back to that. Now I've linked to a couple of different games that you can do. And then I have a slide that is just like jammed full of stuff. And I would really encourage you, if there's something you use here, to stick with what you like. But again, try something out a little bit different. I've heard I saw people in the chat talking about Kahoot. Love Kahoot. It's a great way to kind of up your game and your gamification in your class. Again, it's quiz style, game show style. If you've not used it, all the questions are going to be on whatever projection board or screen you have. Students answer with their devices. They can use their phones, iPads, Chromebooks, laptop, whatever. It is competitive. You can do it in teams or individually. There are pre-made Kahoots. Some of them you do have to pay to access, though, or you can make your own. A humongous strength to Kahoot is that Kahoot allows you to embed videos. You can take your video and you can clip it. So if you only want to play like minute 30 to minute 50, you can do that of a YouTube video. So I really like the question tool in Kahoot. And I actually think the Kahoot question tool is the strongest of all of these tools. And Kahoot tends to be where most people start when they're talking about gamifying their classroom. Really easy way to do reviews. My suggestion is always, we used to do 2 Kahoots a month, every other Friday, and we would just do it as a way to review what we were covering in class. Kids liked it. It was fun. And I also encourage teachers to always put a little bit about themselves in it. Recently, I went and did a review game with a group of high school seniors, and I asked their teachers what their favorite songs were. And so I was able to put a couple of like bonus questions in there about their teachers. So anytime you can kind of talk about yourself, I think the kids enjoy that. Another app or another tool that you could use is quizzes. Again, quizzes, another way to kind of level up your gamification. You can do this at a little bit higher level than our first level that we talked about. This is going to be similar to Kahoot, except all the questions and answers are going to be on your device, and your screen or your board is going to show the leaderboard. So who's in first, where they're at, it's going to play music. And the nice thing about quizzes versus Kahoot is timed. So if we all pop on a Kahoot, what happens is that we all have the same amount of time to answer, right? Quizzes is nice because it can be kind of intentionally longer to take. You can scramble the questions up. And it's just a little bit different way of doing things. I've had students that benefited from Kahoot more than quizzes. And then I've had students that liked quizzes more than Kahoot. It's really just kind of based up to you as the teacher and what works with your students. Again, pre-made, teacher-made, you can make your own quiz in that. Multiple question types, you can add videos, and it is meme-based. So if you or your students like memes, I have a 4th grade daughter right now, and she's obsessed with memes. She wants to make her own meme. We flew our drone last night, and we crashed our drone onto the neighbor's roof, which is not a good thing. So it powered down, like I ran out of battery, and it landed on our neighbor's roof. And so my daughter, she wanted to take a picture of it on the roof and then take a picture of her face going like, and she wanted to put them together and say, the face you make when your dad forgets to charge the drone. Hurtful, right? But quizzes builds in memes, and the kids love memes, and it's a really great way to engage and again to review more content. Now, in the ascending order of complexity, Kahoot is very simple to use, pretty effective. Quizzes is maybe a step up because there's some more features. Now we're getting into like the stuff that is, I think, is significantly more complex. This is my single most favorite gamification tool of all of the tools we'll look at level 2. And that is GymKit or GimKit. I've heard it both ways. I'll be totally honest. I don't know which way to say it, so I say both, and it confuses all the teachers in my district. But GimKit was created by a student. He coded it as a way to review for a test that he had. And he created this app, and it's pure gamification, video game style, the way that you play it. You load the game, and the questions act as some game mechanic. So there's a capture the flag game in this. So your kids would be put into two teams, and they're trying to get the flag and go back to their base without getting tagged. And in order to move, you get movement energy, and you have to answer questions to get movement energy. So you can answer a bunch of questions, but you're vulnerable because somebody could come and tag you. But then you could run, but you'd only run as much energy as you have based on how many questions you've answered. So again, this is my absolute favorite. It is an amazing way to review vocab or facts or things like that. It doesn't give you as much question creation ability as Kahoot or quizzes, but it still works really well. Here's another knock on GymKit, just so you know, it is free, but it's not completely free. So all of the games, there's an Avengers game where you're competing to get different stones and snap the Infinity Gauntlet, and it'll say who was destroyed in the snap and who was. I mean, it's awesome. You got to pay to get all the games, but each week there's a game or two of the week that you can play. So I would highly suggest signing up for this and checking out what you can and can't do with it. This one, again, is my favorite gamification tool. Another one, and I saw this in the chat, is Blookit. Blookit is very video game based, although it tends to go a little bit more like a combination of GymKit and Kahoot. Essentially, what Blookit is going to be is it's a review game. So again, it uses the review component as a way for you to gamify what you're doing, and it will create for you a game like a tower defense game or some type of game. And you have to answer questions in order to compete with some of the game mechanics in Blookit. A thing that this does really well is this builds in blind bags or collecting options, so that when a student answers a question and they earn enough coins or points, they can then exchange that for a randomized character or something to add to their character. Again, it combines that like collectability, leveling, show off all the things you've got with review, but make sure your kids sign up for an account before you use it. And again, it is pre-made, teacher-made stuff. All these you can make, or you can take what they have to use for questions. And it is freemium, so it's free to use, but there are some paid features built into it. Again, the learning curve on Blookit and GymKit is a little bit higher than what Kahoot and quizzes are, but I will say that bar none, the students, I feel like, enjoy Blookit and GymKit a lot more than they like quizzes and Kahoot. I think all of them have a place, and I would highly suggest looking at them and kind of deciding what works with you. But ultimately, pick one, stick with it, see how it goes. At the end of the day, all of these are going to engage your kids and get them involved in this. On this page, I have a ton of tech tools that you can use to gamify in your class, because remember, our second level is going to be the introduction of technology into this review component. And again, I've got Kahoot, quizzes, GymKit, Blookit. I also have Prodigy Math. Again, Prodigy Math takes like Final Fantasy and it melds it with math practice. I do like Prodigy, although I don't think Prodigy is necessarily the deepest curriculum. I serve my district in a curriculum position as well, and I find their curriculum to be a little bit surface level. Like if a standard says, multiplying 2-digit numbers, it's literally just 2-digit numbers multiplying. There's not like word problems, but at the end of the day, they're still practicing math, and there's a lot worse things you could be doing. Dreamscape is like Prodigy, except it's for ELA and reading skills. Really big fan of that. And I would be remiss if I didn't share Freckle by Renaissance. Freckle is not the most gamified tool, but there is a level of gamification where you are answering questions to earn coins and buy an avatar and dress your avatar up. But I will say, of all these, Freckle has the deepest curricular engagement. So if you're looking for something purely for content and curriculum support, I would highly suggest Freckle. When I was in the classroom, I always used one of the review game tools. We used Prodigy sometimes, and then we used Freckle as well. So highly suggest any and all of those. Again, just a couple more things that you can pull from it. I have links here in the slideshow that you can take with you. It's got examples of choice boards, sketch notes, games, classroom gamification ideas, further reading, all sorts of stuff, right? Taking that, okay, so I'm gamifying my behavior, getting the kids to do what I want. Now it's time for me to engage them with the content in a review manner. And there's just a bunch of ideas that you can pull and use in your classroom. So let's take a minute. What are some of the tools you have used that we've talked about? And if so, what was your favorite? And do you have something to share we have not talked about? So let's take a minute. Go ahead and respond to those. I really love what Kathy's saying. Yeah. And Kathy, I agree that classic mode on Look It. I will say I've seen more teachers share that. And like you said, to see these gigantic juniors jumping out of their chair because they're beating their classmates. That's hilarious. That's awesome. Used or been in classes with Cahoots, like Leslie said. Laura said, oh, Spelling City, that's a good one too. Yeah, well said. Leslie talking about iReady, Kahoot quizzes, Book It, all widely used. Fantastic. All good examples. Okay, so we have talked about how do I gamify behavior? That's like your basic level, get the kids to do what we want. Now we've talked about how do we gamify the review or learning aspect, right? So I'm teaching the content. Now I'm reviewing this with my students. Now it's time for us to go big. And this is like legit gamify your classroom. Based on the chat, it sounds like at least a few of you have done this in a bigger way. So hopefully, you can kind of share your experience as we're going. So here's what I want you to think about with this, what gamifying your classroom is. It's the idea that we are taking what we do in a traditional sense and adding a layer to it. And you're going to hear me say these three terms: theme, team, and task. In order to gamify your classroom, I'm not saying gamify the behavior. I'm not saying gamify the review component that you do, playing games with your kids. I'm saying your whole classroom. You have to consider those three things: theme, team, and task. So what do I mean by that? I have included a video here. This is from Michael Matera. I've been very lucky. I've had the chance to work with Mike and with his partner, John Meehan, a couple of times. And I've even run some book studies for my local ROE and county where we read one of their books. And they kind of hit upon this theme of theme, team, and task. What theme is what's the setup of your classroom? This is where you're doing storytelling and world building. So if you are theming your classroom and you've put them into teams, maybe you teach a social studies class. So maybe your teams are historical armies, or maybe they're countries. But that's what theme is. It's what the setup is. And guys, it doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be you creating this incredible theme where you've got costumes and props and other features. You can do that if you want, and that's amazing. But that's not what theme is. It's all in the storytelling that you do as a teacher. So if you're coming to my math class and we've decided that we're doing some fantasy Middle Earth inspired class this year, and you're in teams and we're doing fact practice, it's not fact practice. Instead, what you're doing is you're battling, right? And when you're battling, the battling that you're doing is you're defeating enemies on your paper. So each enemy you defeat, you get a point, right? That's what theming is. And you can watch a little bit more about this. Michael talks about this, Matera, in this video, kind of goes in depth on what that setup looks like. The second step is team. If you're going to gamify, you need to have kids in teams. It's just the best way to do it. It gives you so many opportunities to teach social skills, to teach how to work together, getting along, positive behavior, how to lose. A lot of kids never learn that, how to win. I mean, so many good things. That's the team aspect of this. So think about what your theme is. What's the design of your class? And this could change every quarter, every week, every month, however you want. How are the kids split up into teams? And what are you deciding to do? What is the goal? What is the task? Theme, team, and task. You can do this as a class. You can do this with assignments, activities. Again, if my goal is to have my kids answer math questions, and our theme is, something historical, then we're two armies and we're defeating the enemy, and whoever's defeated the most enemy earns the most points, right? Easy ways to do that. There's no wrong way, but always think about theme, team, and task. A couple of examples of what this could look like. The first one is a choice board bingo. So give them a choice board. It's digital, can be paper. All of these are activities the kids can choose to do. And just tell them, this is an adventure you're going on, and your goal is to do 5 of the tasks in order to finish your adventure. And it's got them on there. Super easy to do, no problem, 0 effort to make a choice board like that. And it's totally your choice in how you're going to do that. Another idea, a graffiti or sketch notes page, really easy. Just tell your students, we're learning about something in class, and you're going to sketch out the notes for this. You're going to, rather than write those physical notes out, you're asking your kids to include a picture that represents those notes. Just something to get them engaged with that. Another little example of how you can theme, team, and task this. The theme is maybe social media management. Each kid gets a historical figure, and you're making some type of social media profile for those historical figures. Again, theme, your social media manager, team, you're working with a partner, task, make a profile for those people. Again, there's really no wrong way to do this. This is just an example where you're trying to find words that best represent vocabulary. Again, theme, team, and task the whole way through. This is probably my single favorite. This is taking Dungeons and Dragons rules, and this is rolling and giving stats to historical characters. So like, what would the strength of an infantry person in the army during World War II be, right? Intelligence, all those things, right? We're creating characters. We're going through that process. Just another way to take that theme, team, and task mentality. So again, how far do we want to go with this level 3? We can go pretty deep. Without getting too deep in the weeds with this, and to respect your time, I do want to hit upon one website, or a couple websites, with regards to true gamification before we fully wrap for the day. And that would be Classcraft and Gamably. So again, Classcraft is free. Most of the good stuff in Classcraft is going to cost you. It is a startup site, and the company is a startup. So the support is good, but this is taking the theme for you, because it's putting your kids in a fantasy world, and it's just asking you to put them in teams and make a task. And it's pretty fun. I've been helping a teacher create an activity with that, and it's worked really, really well. Gamably is like the open version of that. And the idea of Gamably is you make the theme, you make the teams, you create the tasks. However, it's all built directly into that app. And I would highly suggest checking those out, because that's going to do a lot of the work for you if you are interested in this deeper knowledge and level of understanding regarding gamification. So with regards to our time, respecting our time, we do not have to spend too much time talking about this 3rd level. Instead, here's what I want you to do to finish up the last 2 minutes. I can hang out for a couple. You can find out how to connect with me with email, dlerch@marissa40.org, and then my Twitter is @MrLerchClass. I have a few. Feel free to come on. If you have a question or something, drop it in the chat. I would be more than happy to discuss anything, or if you want to throw a problem at me, or just share something, that would be awesome too. So I am willing and able to hang out for a few if we need to. And I appreciate you guys for taking the time today.